Good late afternoon. Good late morning, sorry. Have not eaten, so if I get hangry, that's what's going on there. So this is no more excuses. Today is the day we learn Flow. Who's new at learning Flow? Okay, awesome. Forward-looking statement, base your purchase decisions on current Salesforce features and functionality. And a little bit about myself. I'm Jennifer Lee, Senior Salesforce Business Consultant at John Hancock. I'm also a 3-time MVP. I blog about Salesforce at jenwlee.wordpress.com, where I post a lot of how-tos on Process Builder and Flow. I also do summaries on the upcoming releases. I'm also the co-host of Automation Hour with 2 other MVPs, and if you haven't heard of us, we present use cases and process automation solutions. A lot of the times it will involve Flow, Process Builder, things like that. So if you want to register for our upcoming events, go to automationhour.com. I also love Trailhead. I'm a 5-time Ranger. And I have the golden hoodie, and that was from getting the Awesome Admin Award. And my personal Twitter handle is @JenWLee. So at the end of today's session, you will learn the basics of Flow and Cloudflow Designer. You will know when to use Flow, understand the capabilities of Flow, and I really want everyone to leave with the newfound confidence and the foundational building blocks to build your very first Flow. I will have use cases here, and they're all recorded. There's going to be, full disclosure, a lot of text that you don't normally see in presentations, but it's intentional. Because what I want you to do is at the end of the session when we post out on the chatter, that you take it as a reference guide and keep using it. Go through the use cases that we go through and build them out. And I want to hear from you when you build out your first Flow. And if you have problems, reach out to me. I will help you. Okay, so learning Flow for me, it was not love at first Flow. It wasn't. I went to Dreamforce 14, learned about Process Builder, didn't even know that Cloudflow Designer existed, and I'm like, oh, here are some cool declarative automation tools that people can use, and we can stop coding for these things. But I couldn't just tell my team, go and use Flow, right? It wasn't happening. So I had to learn Flow and teach my team. First time I opened up Cloudflow Designer, blank canvas, I'm like, what do I do? What's a variable? Like, I had no idea. Close, epic fail, right? So then, this was before Trailhead. There was no Trailhead. The help resources were pretty slim pickings. So I Googled, and I went to resources like Rakesh Gupta's Automation Champion, or Brian Kwong and Mark Ross's Wizard News. And I went and looked at their blogs, and I'm one who needs to do to learn. So I took it, I did step by step, and I repeated it, and eventually it resonated. So it didn't work once, twice, 3, 4 times, but keep at it. Be persistent, and then it will eventually click. Just know that in using Flow, you're naturally progressing to the developer side of things. So a lot of the concepts that you would use, variables, loops, things like that, will naturally, if you want to move to the developer side, those would be helpful. So after I started getting comfortable with Flow, I was out on the Trailblazer community, started helping people, and I really couldn't give them solutions in a chatter post. It really wasn't helpful. So I ended up creating a blog in 2015, and I started referencing people to that. And then I did that more and more. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to do things in Flow and then share them, right? That's how I learned, so I'm paying it forward, right? So eventually, ... Flow Queen. Flow Queen, Automation Queen, Process Queen, dubbed by the community. So why Flow? It replaces code, and you could definitely reduce the code in your org. It also puts the power in the hands of the admins, so they can create those automated processes and allow the developers to focus on developer tasks. We can do this, right? We don't need developers. We might need them for Lightning components that we want to reference in Flow, but let's be empowered to take on that process automation work, and then we're maintaining it ourselves. And then I mentioned that natural progression to a developer. If you want to be an admin developer or a developer, Flow is a good place to get started because it's point and click. But behind the scenes, what Salesforce is doing is it's converting it into code for you, right? And then lastly, it's cool to be a Flownatic. So let's go Flow HANA. All right, so Lightning Flow is the process automation product. It consists of 2 tools, Process Builder, which create processes, and Cloudflow Designer that creates flows. So some of the flows use cases will be if you wanted to collect information from your internal users or your community users. You want to be able to provide some guided wizard to your users or drop some automation on those Lightning pages or apps. You can also create automated tasks and other processes. Another thing is Flow allows you to build it once and leverage it multiple times. Finding that you're building the same steps over and over again, you can build that in one flow and then bring it into those flows. So you're only maintaining it once and not multiple versions of that. And the other cool thing is Flow also deletes records, and that's something that Workflow Rules and Process Builder does not do. Here are just different ways that you could invoke Flow. Some of these we will cover off in today's session. And this is Cloudflow Designer. This is the old UI. We know that I think coming spring 19, we'll see the new Flow Builder. But right now, this is what we're dealing with. This is a built-out flow that I've created. All right, so variables. They're pretty important when building a flow. Your flow has to have at least 1 or more variables. And I think of variables as something like a Tupperware container that holds a value. And at some point in time, you're going to use that value in your flow. So there are 4 different variables. There's variable that holds a single value. There's collection variables. It's a grouping of the same data type. And there's also S-object variable. Think of this as pulling the whole entire Salesforce record, all the fields you can use anywhere in Flow. And then S-object collection variable is 1 or more Salesforce records. Again, any of those fields in that record are available for use in Flow. Now for the attributes, how many people have created custom fields? Right, so the data types should look pretty similar. It's not the whole comprehensive list that you would get with creating custom fields, but they're pretty similar here. You also need to specify input and output type. So what that means is telling Flow how that variable is accessed. So if it's marked private, that means you could only use that variable within that given flow. If it's marked input only, then you're sending stuff into your flow. So that could be via Process Builder, Visualforce page, or another flow. Output only means you're taking the value in your flow and sending it outwards. So that would be sending it to a Visualforce controller or another flow, or what we call subflow. But as you're beginning, I would say give yourself the greatest flexibility and mark it input and output, and then you don't have to figure it out when you're creating them. All right, I'm not going to read through all this. Again, it's here for resource purposes, but I will point out a couple that we will use in today's session. So we will use formula. If you've created a formula, it's the same deal here in Flow. And we're also going to use dynamic choice. We're going to use choice and pick list choice. And these are in our interactive screens that we're going to put together. Choice allows you to manage a statically maintained list, a pick list or radio button list. And then pick list choice allows you to pull all the values from that pick list field that you created in the database. All right, we're also going to create screens. So this allows you to either show information or collect information from your end user, whether they're internal or your community user. We're going to talk about decision, which is a basic if-then statement. So if you, as a kid, might have read those choose an adventure books, you get to a certain point, and then you decide, right? And then you go on your different paths. So that's essentially what a decision is. And we're going to leave those other pieces for now. Now, in terms of data, we have the options to create, update, lookup, and delete. Now, what's the difference between the record and the fast piece? So think back to that variable slide that we had. I talked about variable and collection variable. So that would apply to the record, create, update, lookup, and delete. And then the fast, if you're working with an entire Salesforce record, so the S object variable or the S object collection variable is where you would pull in the fast, create, update, lookup, and delete. All right, and I mentioned being able to bring in a subflow, but we're also going to call local actions. And this is bringing in the power of lightning components and magnifying that in your flow. So we'll be able to do things like show a toast message. So that's the success message that you see in Lightning Experience. We will also be able to redirect a user to a specific record in our flow. All right, but before you go and open up Cloudflow Designer and start building your first flow, I want to recommend that you draw out your process beforehand, right? Think it through, think out the happy paths, the exception paths, because when it's on paper, you can erase and draw and do whatever, but if you configured it, now you're gonna have to delete stuff, and it's gonna take much more effort to refactor than it is if you had it on paper and everyone agreed to it, and then you went and configured it. So now we're going to start our first use case, and this is assign a lead to me. So a sales rep needs to assign a lead to him or herself, and without automation, right? You click on the change owner link, and if you have users and queues in your org, then you have to select between the two, then you have to type in the name, then if there's multiple, then you have to click on it. So that's multiple steps. I want to be able to do it in one. So we're going to create a flow that does a record update on the lead record in one step and updates it to the current user. So we have two variables that we're going to use, and I have standard naming conventions for my variables. So I like them to start with VAR and whatever they're called. So the current user ID will store the user's ID that I'm currently on the record, and then the lead record ID. Then we're going to add a custom button to invoke the flow, and then we're going to add the flow to the page lead layout. So our components here are flow, button, page, lead page layout. So the process we're automating is just one step. It's updating the lead owner to the current user, and we're going to do that with the flow record update. And these slides looked better on a Windows than a Mac. Flow doesn't know anything, so you have to tell it everything. So in order to update the owner, we need the lead ID, and that's what we're going to store in the variable var lead ID. And to update the owner to the current user, we will store that value in the variable var current user ID. And here's our one-step flow. Can't be any easier than that. All right, so now we're going to start it. Oops. Let's go back. First, we're going to create the variables. Var lead ID, text, input and output, and the var current user ID, text, input, and output. I like giving my things descriptions. And then we're going to go into the palette, and we're going to find the record update element. Give it a name and a description. We're going to have it go on the lead object. And here we're going to take the ID equals the variable var lead ID. And once we find that record, we're going to update the owner ID field with the variable var current user ID. Hit OK. We're going to double click to mark that as a starting point. I know there's only one element, but that's how it is. And then we save. We're give it a name, assign the lead to me, like giving descriptions. We're hit OK, close. This gives a warning that we haven't connected it to anything, but that's OK because it's only one-step flow. And then don't forget to activate it after the fact, because if it's not activated, you can't actually use it. So that's our first flow. So for the button part, we're going to create a detail page button. And the first portion of the URL we got from the URL that's on the flow page. And then we're sending 2 values into the variables. That's why it would be marked input if you didn't specify input and output only on the variable. So we have the var lead ID, and we're passing over the merge field for the lead ID, and then the var current user ID, and we're passing over the field that holds the current user's ID. And then at the end of it, we're returning the user back to the lead record after we're done. One thing to note, the variable names are case sensitive. They have to match exactly how you named it in your flow. So if you're troubleshooting this and your flow isn't working as expected, chances are you didn't name them exactly the same. Okay, and here we're on a record owned by Tori Gatewood, and I just clicked on the button, and after it refreshes, then now Jen Lee owns it. And that's it. That's it for our first use case. So again, to recap, we did an update of lead owner to the current user using one flow element, record update. All right, our next challenge is we have a limited time offer for a new product. We want our customer service reps, as they're servicing accounts, to recommend a product through a series of screens. So we're going to first ask our customer if they're interested in the product. If they're interested, behind the scenes, we're going to create an opportunity to track that interest, but we're going to thank the customer regardless. So our flow, we're going to have 2 variables we're going to create, one called record ID and one called var account name. Now, we talked about my standard naming convention for variables. Now, that breaks the rule, right, record ID, but that's a reserved variable that Salesforce has. So anytime when you're working on Lightning pages and there's a record ID, that's reserved for the use. So it would be the record ID of whatever page you're on. And then we're going to use 2 formulas. So we're creating opportunities. So on your close date, we want it to be set to today plus 3 days. And we also want standard naming conventions for our opportunities as well. So we're going to have a static text that says product ABC interest plus, and then we're going to pull in the account name. So that's going to be concatenated into our opportunity name. Then we're going to create a quick action to call the flow, and then we're going to add that quick action to the account page layout. So 3 components that we'll be working on here is flow, quick action, and account page layout. So the process we're going to automate. We're going to ask the customer for their interest. Then we're going to determine if they're interested. If interested, we're going to create the opportunity, but regardless, we're going to thank them for their business. So first, we're going to create a flow screen. Next, a decision. Then we're going to do a record lookup, because we're on the account page, so we know what the ID is. We need to get the account name. So we're going to do a record lookup using the ID to get the account name, and then we're going to use it in the record crate of the opportunity for that standard naming convention and the formula. And then lastly, we're going to create a screen that thanks the customer for their business. So again, Flow doesn't know anything. So we have the record ID as the account ID, and then in the text that you can't see is the opportunity name, product, ABC interest, plus the variable account name. So here's our 5-step flow. All right, we're going to start off with creating variables, the record ID, and this is text input and output. And then our next variable is the var account name, text input and output. And now we're going to create the screen. So we're going to drag it over, double click, we're going to give it a name and a description. We're going to scroll down and deselect allow pause and allow previous. Then we're going to click add a field. And then we're going to scroll down to display text, drag it over, double click to configure it. And we're going to give it a unique name. And we're going to paste the text we're going to show to the customer service rep. And then we're going to drag over radio buttons. And we're going to pick choice. This will be interest in new product where we're asking for whether they're interested, yes or no. So we're creating a choice, and this is a statically maintained choice field that we have, choice options in the flow. So we're going to go through and create the no answer. Hit OK. And then we're going to drag over a decision. Now we're going to determine if that customer is interested in our product. So give it a name, a description, and our outcome is yes, they're interested. And we're going to take a look at the interested in new product, the screen from the previous, and it's equals to the yes choice, and our default outcome will be no. So our next step is to do a record lookup. And this is to take the account ID and find the account name. So give a name and a description. We're going to look up the account object where the ID equals the record ID. And then we're going to take the name of the account and store it in the variable var account name. And click assign null if no values are found. Then we're going to do the record create. So here's the opportunity that we're creating. So give it a name and a description. We're going to create it on the opportunity object. And we're going to set 4 fields. So Cont'd, the close date, the opportunity name, and then the stage name. These are the API names. So account ID, we're going to use the record ID. The close date, we're going to create a formula resource. Here we're going to give it a name and a description, and we're going to change the value data type to date. And it's today plus 3, that's the syntax for it. And we're going to also do something similar to the name, so use a formula resource. And we're going to have the ABC, product ABC interest plus the account name concatenated. And stage name, we're set to prospecting. And now the screen is just going to be text that says, thank you for your business. So name, description, and then add a field. We're going to drag over the display text and then thank the customer for their business. So now double click on the screen to mark it as a starting element in your flow, and then we're going to draw the connectors. So decision to screen, we're going to use the no outcome. And then decision to record lookup will be yes, and then the record lookup to record create, and then back to the screen. So then now we're going to name it and give it a description, hit OK. That will save it. Then we will hit close and activate. All right, so I'm not going to go over this step real quick, but this is how you configure a flow with a quick action. And then now for the quick action we created was the cross-sell button here. And now we have the screen where we're asking for the interest. We're going to say yes. We're hit next. We get the thank you message. And then we have the opportunity that was created with that standard naming convention. So we're going to skip along here. So our next step is to delete inactive contact cases. So when a customer is no longer doing business with the company, we want to update the status to inactive. And then the rep submits a request to delete the contact because they don't have the CRUD rights, only the system administrator does. However, one thing to note, if the contact has associated cases and those aren't deleted, and the contact is, because there's no master detail relationship, now those cases will become orphaned, and that creates a data cleanup issue. So here we're going to automate the process that once a contact is marked inactive, we're going to run a process that then goes and sees if there are cases, and then we're going to get rid of them. So here's our process. When a contact is inactive, find all the cases for that contact. Then we're going to determine if the contact has any cases, and then if they do, delete. So process builder for the first step. Then the next 3 steps are Cloudflow Designer with a fast lookup, decision, and a fast delete. Remember, fast is 1 or more Salesforce records. So here we need the variable contact ID to do the lookup of the cases, and then to delete the cases, we need to have a collection to hold those cases for us to delete them. So here is our 3-step process. All right, we're going to create the variable, var contact ID, text input and output. And this is the S collection of cases, and this is on the case object. And now we're going to do a fast lookup. And this is looking up 1 or more Salesforce records. So we're going to look up on the case. And here we're going to look up the contact ID equals that variable that we created, the var contact ID. Once we find that, we're going to store everything in the S collection of cases, S object collection variable. And we're going to set some fields, the contact ID and the ID. Next, we're going to pull in a decision. And here, we already looked up the contacts, the cases. Now we want to see if there's anything in there, right? So we're going to look to see if there's anything, and the first outcome will be cases found. So it looks at that S collection of cases. Is null false? 2 negatives equals a positive. It means it has at least 1 record. And the other outcome will be no cases found. So we want to make sure we have something in there to start deleting, because if there's nothing there and we start to delete, then it's going to fault your flow. So last step is the fast delete, and all you need to do is specify the variable that it's going to look at to delete the records. And you just draw the connectors, and that's the case found. Double click to mark that as a starting point. Then we're going to save, give it a name and a description, and then close and activate. Now we're going to go into Process Builder. On the case object, where the record is created or edited, we have 1 criteria node, and this is status is inactive. And we have a custom field that we're making sure the pick list is inactive. Then we're going to fire a flow, and we're going to call the flow that we just created. Now, if you forgot to activate the flow, your flow is not going to show up in this list. So we're going to pass over a variable, the var contact ID. We're going to do a field reference, and we're going to mark the contact ID as what we're passing over. Hit choose, hit save, hit activate, and confirm. Now we're on Thomas Ripley's contact record. He's active and he has 3 cases. We're going to change that to inactive, and then we're going to see those cases get deleted. All right. So that's, in summary, what we just covered off on. Last one, a rep is dealing with a difficult customer situation. So he wants to be able to send a gift card to a customer. So here we're going to collect the customer, and then we're going to specify the gift card ID, because what we want to do is we're going to take the customer service rep to that record after it's created. We're going to get fancy. We're going to bring in the power of Lightning. So Lightning components. So we're going to install 3 components: the lookup Lightning component, the local action show toast, and the local action open S object. These links go to the unofficial Lightning Flow.net website that's managed by the Salesforce product management team for process automation. And then we're going to add the flow to the utility bar. So before you're able to use Lightning components in Flow, you need to enable My Domain in your org. You need to also go to the process automation settings screen and enable Lightning runtime for flows. And then you could install, manage, and manage Lightning components into your org, or have your developer create them for you using specific tags so that they could be used in Flow. So the process, customer service rep selects a customer and specifies the gift card amount. We're going to create the gift card record. We're going to show a message, success message, that the record was created. And then we're going to take the customer service rep to that newly created record. So here we use screen with the lookup Lightning component, because Flow doesn't out of the box allows lookup capability. We have a record create. And then we're going to show toast in a local action. So that just allows you to show the, in Lightning experience, that green pop-up message. And then local action open S object to return a user to a specific Salesforce record. So here, to send the customer the gift card, we need to store the contact ID in the variable contact ID. And to take the for the flow to take it back to the newly created gift card record, we need to store that in the variable gift card ID. So over to the left is the screen that we're going to create with the lookup and the radio buttons for the dollar amounts and our 4-step flow. So here we're going to create the variable var contact ID. And for kicks, I'm going to mark it input only. And then our other variable, var gift card ID, and I'm going to keep it private, so meaning it's only used within our flow. So I'm going to drag over the the screen, and this is with the lookup and the radio buttons. So deselect, allow previous, allow pause, add a field. Now we're going to drag over the Lightning component. So if you have any Lightning components available for use in Flow, they'll be shown in that drop down there, and we're going to set up a couple of attributes. So object name, the field label, display which field, and the output which field adds value. So the object name, we're going to query the contact object, so we're going to use contact, and these are API names. Field label, select a contact. And once we have the names, we're going to show the contact name. So that's the API name. And then we're going to store it as the ID. And then for the output variable, we're going to store it in the var gift card ID. Sorry, the var contact ID. And then lastly, we're going to drag over the radio buttons, and this is for the dollar amount. And this time, we're going to pull it from the database. So we're going to use the pick list choice. Give it a name, and then we're going to mark it as the gift card custom object that I created. And the field dollar amount. Then we're going to pull in a record crate, and this will create the gift card. And this is on the gift card custom object that I created. And we're going to set 3 fields. One is the customer, the dollar amount, and then the status. So here we're set it to the variable var contact ID. Dollar amount is from the screen, from the previous screens. And then status is submitted. And then for the variable, we're going to use the var gift card ID. Now we're going to pull in the local action. So scroll down, and then if you have any Lightning components that allow for local actions, you'll see that new section there. So this is that success message that we want to show. So we're going to configure 2 attributes, the message and the type. And the type is success. You can also select to show error. And then output, we're going to cross that out because we're not passing anything outside of our Lightning component. And then we're also drag over the open S object as well. And here we're going to set it to var gift card ID, so it takes the user back to that record after the fact. So mark the screen as your starting element, and then draw the connectors. Hit close, hit activate. So now we're adding it to the utility bar for adding the flow, and then now here's it in action. So we're looking up Ashley James. We're selecting $15 to send her. That's the toast message that showed up, and then it took you to the gift card record. Oh, okay. So that's the end. So hopefully you've learned the basics of Flow, Cloudflow Designer, you know when to use it, understand the capabilities, and now you could create your first flow. So for resources, I co-host Automation Hour. Here's a link to our bit.ly for our YouTube channel for our posted recordings. Automation Hours where you could register for our upcoming sessions. Again, it's use cases, and we show the process automation piece to that. I also gave you resources to the unofficial Flow website to download those Lightning components that we covered, or new ones that they have. There's also a trail mix that I created for you, recommended trailhead content. There's also the Trailblazer community. As you're stuck, post to there. Someone will jump in and help. And I also included the blogs for myself, Rakesh, David. And if you want to learn loops, Pete Fife did a really good Automation Hour intro to looping. And with that, today is the day we've conquered Flow.